This video was produced by
In case you haven't met me yet, I'm Remy, and I'm with the Virginia Center for Wind Energy. I just took my t-shirt off so I could be more professional somehow. I wanted to just thank you guys all for coming. This has been a wonderful 2 days for us, a lot of great discussion. I have heard a lot of great feedback about the workshops and all of the panels, and I hope that you all have gotten something out of being here other than good food. And more food to come if you're sticking around for the networking cookout. Hint, hint. And if you're signing up for the wind farm tour, hint, hint, for tomorrow. I'm not going to take up a lot of your time because I know that we all want to get on the road or get over to the networking cookout. So I'm not going to get into too much, but I do want to just kind of pull back from the opening keynote with Andy, with an emphasis on our offshore wind potential here in Virginia, and the great discussions that went on this afternoon in the offshore session. And with that, I want to introduce our keynote speaker this afternoon. Our keynote speaker is Kris Ohleth. She is the Director of Permitting for the Atlantic Wind Connection Backbone Transmission Project. Her past positions include Policy Manager for Coastal and Marine Spatial Planning Issues for the Ocean Conservancy and the Director of Environmental Affairs for both Deepwater Wind and Blue Water Wind. Kris worked as a research technician and editor for the National Marine Fisheries Service in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, and as a communications coordinator for the Nature Conservancy. She earned an undergraduate degree from Rutgers University and a master's degree from the University of Rhode Island in Coastal and Ocean Policy. She's on the board of the U.S. Offshore Wind Collaborative, the New Jersey Environmental Lobby, and serves as the chair of the New York, New Jersey chapter of the Women of Wind Energy. So I want to welcome Kris, and I'm going to turn it over to her.
Great. Thanks, Remy. Don't clap. I haven't even said anything yet. And what is one supposed to say when they're asked to do a keynote at a university with such bright, beautiful people, such big minds? You know, it's so refreshing to be here and to step back and think about offshore wind and just think about the big picture. The title of my few slides, because I think we're all slided out at this point, Offshore Wind Transmission and Finding Your Motivation. So I'll tell you a brief story. I was at a conference just yesterday up in Boston, Energy Ocean. And we were there talking about marine hydrokinetics and offshore wind power. And I've been at that conference for 4 years. And for 4 years, I've been seeing the same people. And we've been talking about a lot of the same things. And to be frank, I think a lot of us are experiencing that at this point. We're hearing a lot of the same things. When is this really going to get going? In 2006, I started working with Blue Water Wind. And we were to be building the first wind farm in the United States off the coast of Delaware in 2012. Well, this is 2012, and we're many years away from building a wind farm there. But I think at the same time, conferences like this, where we can have the bigger picture dialogue, is so important to help keep the motivation going. Because when I think about the big picture and I think about the future, I know it's one that doesn't involve the word coal. And it doesn't involve all the pollution that comes with that. It involves a clean future, one where we can power electric vehicles in a sane, responsible way, one that we can be proud to leave to our future generations. So I want to just think big for a little while and think about offshore wind at scale and think about transmission at scale. As I mentioned, I've been working in the offshore wind field since 2006 when I started with Blue Water Wind. And the last thing we thought about was transmission. We thought about building turbines, we thought about how to do the foundations, the platforms, we thought about what they looked like, but we never thought about this. It was almost, you know, kind of an afterthought. And I can tell you that 80% of the faults with European offshore wind farms are due to the fact that the transmission systems fail. And that's because they weren't thinking about it either. So when I heard about the Atlantic Wind Connection back 2 years ago, October of 2010, I thought, what a great idea. Take the transmission component off of the backs of the wind developers. They'll build their own inter-array cables between their turbines, but we will build a system that connects that wind power to the strongest points of the terrestrial grid in a robust and efficient and environmentally sound way. I'll posit that there's two ways to get offshore wind to shore. There's this way. Erin showed us the offshore wind energy areas that the Department of Interior has designated. They're areas off the coast of the mid-Atlantic states where wind farms can be built in an expedited manner. Well, if each one of these wind farms, as have been expressed interest according to these wind energy areas, this is the amount of radial cables that would have to be built to satisfy the power generated from these wind farms. So as you can see, that's dozens of cables, dozens of cable crossings into the sensitive marine environment. I don't know if anyone had followed the politics of blue water wind attempting to build a cable onto the shores of Delaware and bringing it through a small municipality. But that in and of itself, that one cable, could have really foiled the project. There was a huge amount of contention. So we could do this, or we could build this interstate transmission backbone line. I just think this is a revolutionary way of thinking big, thinking about offshore wind at scale. And isn't that where we want to be? We don't want to be building one wind farm here, building Cape Wind, building one farm off the coast of Delaware. No, we want 7,000 megawatts of offshore wind at scale on a transmission backbone and really delivering the impact to the environment that we want to see. Our analogy is, do you want to build local roads or that interstate highway network? Now, offshore wind, renewable energy, been developing 20 years off the coast in Europe, and they're already seeing the real benefits of developing what they're calling the European supergrid. This is also an HVDC system that would connect wind farms off the coast and deliver it to the points of the grid, just as the Atlantic Wind Connection project would. So this is a really exciting example for us to follow. And when I think about how this is kind of coming about, I think about the story I heard one time about cell phones in India. And it might not seem apparent how they two could be connected, but what I learned when I read this story was that people in India, everyone was getting a cell phone. People who had never had a phone before were getting a cell phone. And it kind of made total sense. Why would someone who never had a phone before get a landline just because it's what everybody had first before? So why not look to Europe and say, hey, they've evolved. They understand, they get it. They know how to do it at scale. So let's go right to the cell phone. Let's go right to the grid that makes sense using an HVDC system. I think I just have a couple more slides for you. Just in closing, want to again talk about a few more details of our system. It's a 10-year plan to connect over 7,000 megawatts of offshore wind to the grid. Our proposal is to bring the wind into the strongest points of the terrestrial grid. One thing that's super critical for developers is that there are significant costs associated with upgrading the terrestrial network. In our area, it's the PJM network. That's our regional transmission operator. So when an offshore wind farm is built, there are literally millions of dollars of upgrades associated with making the terrestrial grid robust enough to accept the injection of hundreds of megawatts of wind. So what the Atlantic Wind Connection would do is remove all that cost and risk from a developer. So just to be clear, there's no cost to plug into the Atlantic Wind Connection. We are a power strip in the middle of the ocean. We're an open access transmission system. So we'll be regulated as a federally regulated public utility under FERC. You would apply to the PJM queue process to plug into our system, and there would be no cost to it. There would be no upgrades associated. So the developers we've talked to find this, as you can imagine, very appealing. Because what have we been talking about all day? The cost of offshore wind. If you were in the offshore wind panel this afternoon, you saw cost of offshore wind up over 30 cents per kilowatt hour. I mean, how can we do that? How can we do that in Virginia, where your cost of power is bargain basement cost? So what we're saying is take over 10% of the capital cost of offshore wind off the back of the developer. We socialize that over the entire PJM system. We don't charge the developer to connect to our system. So we bring down the cost, we reduce their permitting risk, and we make the entire transmission grid system a little more robust, a little more reliable. So I talked a little bit in the beginning, and I should have warned you that when we talked about finding our motivation, keeping our motivation, getting through to this, thinking about a 10-year plan, staying motivated in this industry that is often so challenging, I should have warned you that I was going to do a little exercise with you at the end. And I'm just going to take 2 more minutes of your time to do this. I want you to think about writing your sentence. Now, what does that mean? There was a book recently published by a guy named Daniel Pink, and the book is called Drive, and it's all about what motivates us. Now, what motivates me is a cleaner planet, getting wind built, and it's been something I've been pursuing since I've graduated. So I really love seeing so many students here that are interested in joining our ranks. So what Daniel Pink said is that imagine you were to die tomorrow. What one sentence would be written about you? How do you spend your time to advance that sentence? So imagine what that sentence is. I want you to take a minute to think about it. And I'm going to give you a couple examples. I'm going to start with a really absurd one that came from the book that I find, to me, I just find it comical. Abraham Lincoln's sentence. That he preserved the Union and freed the slaves. Well, that's kind of a big goal. Let's start a little smaller. I'll tell you what my sentence is, not to give away the ending. She helped to site and permit the first offshore wind backbone transmission system in the United States. That's my sentence. That's what I focus on. Your sentence doesn't have to be about your job, your school. It can be about anything you're doing. He taught 2 generations of people how to read. That's a great sentence. That comes from a parent. She helped people overcome their fears and realize their dreams. Doesn't have anything to do with your job, but it has so much to do with who you are and what motivates you every day. He put a smile on everyone's face. What a great way to be remembered, and what a great way to pursue every day and stay motivated. Now, my favorite sentence. She wasn't who you expected. Thank you very much.
Don't go anywhere. Come back up here. Lona, thank you so much for coming all the way from Massachusetts from that conference.
My pleasure.
And a token of our appreciation.
Oh, thank you, Remy.
Thank you again so much for coming out. And we really appreciate you being here.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Great conference.
So I feel like that was a really good ending to where we are. I think where we really need to be is figuring out what's going to motivate us to get us to the next steps. And we all now know what the next steps are because we had so many great discussions today. So find your sentence and like she says, strive for making that happen. So I just want to maybe touch on a couple more little housekeeping things before we get the closing remarks here from Ken Newbold. I just want to remind you all, and thank you again for coming, but also remind you that all of the presentations and all of the video that has been being taken while you were here is going to be available on our website. The presentations will be available on our website, and I believe the videos will be available on JM YouTube, and we can make sure that those are available to you all as you want them. The other thing I want to remind you is you may have noticed the little posters with the QR code on them. We do have an evaluation, and we really do want your feedback about how this was put together so that we can make sure 2014 is even better. So if you don't have a smartphone and you can't scan the QR code and get directly there, we will be sending around an email with a link to the evaluation in about a week so that you can do it then. But if you have thoughts and you can't get to the QR code like right now with your immediate thoughts, be sure to stop one of our blue-shirted volunteers and let them know what you thought, because we really do appreciate your feedback, and we want to make this the best conference for you all and make sure we're meeting your needs next time. And with that, I am going to introduce Ken Newbold. Ken is the Director of Research and Development at James Madison University. In this capacity, he's responsible for building collaborative interdisciplinary teams to pursue a variety of external sponsored opportunities, facilitate research and development opportunities for faculty, staff, and student researchers to promote the growth of JMU's sponsored research activities and faculty career development. And he also assists in identifying and responding to strategic initiatives. Additionally, he serves as the director of the Institute for Energy and Environmental Research, where he works closely on wind-related project development and the Virginia Coastal Energy Research Consortium and the Virginia Center for Wind Energy. Wow, that was a lot. I'm sorry. Ken, thank you so much for coming, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Remy. That was a nice introduction, and it's great to see everybody this evening. It's really a privilege to have everybody on our campus over these last couple days, and I know how much JMU appreciates the ability to host this symposium every other year, and we hope to welcome you back soon. I really hope that this has been a very meaningful experience for each of you from a learning perspective, an opportunity to network. I know there's another event coming up after this, so I'll put another plug in for the good food and the networking opportunity. There's a lot of what happens at these conferences really does happen at those kind of informal sessions, and when you're not in the audience listening to somebody like me ramble on before the end of the day. The JMU, as I said, we're really privileged to do this because we do consider ourselves a leader, not just in wind energy, but in research and outreach, but most importantly, a collaborative approach to working with our partners and finding solutions to some of the biggest challenges facing our nation and even our world. And that's a lot of what I just wanted to kind of talk to you about tonight, is the ability of partnerships and collaboration and strategic alliances as you go forward from this conference. I think you've heard a lot about some of the challenges and potential pitfalls and hurdles that might be out there going forward with wind energy or alternative energy in general. But I think the fact that you're here with us over a couple days, taking time out of your very busy schedules, means that those hurdles aren't going to get in your way, that you want to find solutions, you want to be proactive, and you want to be leaders and make wind energy or whatever your other interests might be a reality in our overall energy portfolio. I know our governor and administration in Virginia talks about making Virginia the energy capital of the East Coast. Well, I think that being here today and yesterday, and if you stay for the tours and the other meetings tomorrow, you've heard all about how wind fits into that portfolio and the important element that that has, and really the potential overall for offshore and onshore wind in Virginia. So I hope the lessons learned will resonate, and you can carry that out of this meeting and make that a reality, and really to have wind serve as that important backdrop and element of being the energy capital, and what we just heard about this backbone and all along the eastern seaboard of what we can do, going back to this idea of collaboration. That's what's going to make us as Virginians successful, the nation more of a leader in alternative energy, and to make it a cleaner planet, and to reduce some of our reliance on fossil fuel production and consumption. You know, we are all faced with growing challenges, not only from permitting and regulation and policy and politics that I think many of the conversations have talked about over the past few days, but the other looming element that we all hear about in the daily news are economic conditions. And that's something that I wanted to mention briefly, is that as I talk about partnerships and collaboration, you know, we hear so much about it's the end of the fiscal year, we've got to prepare our budgets, and we hear about cuts and doing more with less. Well, I always like to say, this gives us the avenue to do more with more. And by that I mean, we've spent 2 days together, we've met new faces, heard new ideas, so let's go out and capitalize on those partnerships and those connections that we've made to do more and to collaborate, because I think we can all learn from each other, we can leverage our resources, and we can build more partnerships to make dreams become reality and not get so caught up with, well, we can't do it because. Well, let's work together to find a solution to do it and do it coming out of this conference. And really to expand the reach beyond Virginia into the Mid-Atlantic, to look nationally and to find solutions that may have worked elsewhere and to bring those to Virginia, or to take the lessons learned from Virginia and apply them in other settings. I was involved in this conference for the first time 2 years ago, and it is really rewarding to see the agenda, to see a lot of new faces here, because that means the message is getting out, but also to reconnect with old friends. And I hope that you've had that same experience. And to hear more and more about the exciting projects, because 2 years ago, there were a lot of kind of nascent ideas and new concepts and people with energy and excitement to put these into place. And some of those projects have happened, but there's new ones coming down the pipeline, and that continues to grow. And this environment, I think, has been a rich experience to foster that. One of those projects that was announced 2 years ago was the small wind testing and training facility, which we actually got to unveil, I guess figuratively, or at least cut the ribbon on today. If you haven't already seen it, I do encourage you to walk outside and take a quick tour through the parking lot adjacent to this facility, and to see the small wind turbine that we've installed on our campus. And that really came to fruition because of this conference and because of the hard work behind the scenes of leaders in Virginia to make wind testing and training a priority. There was a ARRA, a stimulus grant that provided some funds to the Commonwealth that were directed through the governor's office, and Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling made a very exciting announcement 2 years ago at this conference that they were going to put that facility here on the campus of James Madison. We now have a beautiful wind turbine. I commented to a few people that despite some of the longevity, but I think we had a good process. I know a lot of the people in this room worked on it, but being a resident of Rockingham County and Harrisonburg and the Shenandoah Valley, working at JMU every day, as I drive through town and talk to people, there are so many amazing angles to see that turbine. And it is really a new, beautiful addition to our skyline, not only of our campus, but our community. And if it's done one thing, it's started conversations. I have so many people who say, oh, I drove past your campus on the interstate. Where did that turbine come from? What is it doing? There are people in the community who have heard very little about or know not very much about wind energy, who ask and say, hey, you're involved in research at JMU. What's going on with that turbine out on your campus? So it has sparked an interest in a community. So again, the visibility of wind, the wind resources and turbines, I think that's a very powerful message that we can send in our local community just to start that education process. And I can't wait to see school groups coming and using it, our students being able to access it more and more, and it is educating that next generation in the pipeline of people who will be able to learn more about wind energy and implement those ideas into practice. And that's what's exciting about this conference and the overall power of alternative energy from an education standpoint. So with that vision that I think that has been set forth, I just want to close and again thank you for this opportunity to be with you and to wrap up the conference. But I want to close with a few thank yous, but also a very brief challenge. Not as broad as writing your own sentence, but thinking about that, because I think that's exciting, but another challenge nonetheless. But first, I do want to thank the JMU team, Dr. John Miles leading the center here at JMU, and Remy, Pangle for all their work, but also everyone who has a blue t-shirt on, who's worked so hard behind the scenes to bring these 2 days to you, together for you, to arrange for the speakers, the facility, and the content. I said I know that they've worked around the clock to make this happen. So thank you to the JMU group that helped bring this together. Also to the administration and the team at JMU that have supported not only this conference, but the capabilities and the facilities at JMU to bring this together. Dr. Linwood Rose, who is our president, he has worked really in Richmond and in Washington with other presidents in higher education to bring wind energy to the forefront. Our provost, Dr. Jerry Benson, Dean Sharon Lovell, and Dr. Eric Maslin, who's the department head of the Department of Integrated Science and Technology, which really supports a lot of these efforts in research and education, and others at JMU that have made wind energy education and research a priority. Our administration and our team of faculty have really supported this effort and continue to lead the way. And lastly, but definitely not least, to thank all of our sponsors for this ability to host this program. Without their support and generous contributions, this really would not be a reality here today. I do want to leave you with the challenge that I talked a little bit about of collaboration and partnership. Make this symposium not one of just listening and learning, but one of action. Take an idea, take a contact, and go back to your office and to your daily life, and go ahead and act on something that came from this conference. Because really, I think the overall spirit of this is not just the idea sharing, but putting thought to action and theory to practice, because that's what's going to really foster the vision, as I mentioned, with the wind turbine, but making our state and our region that leader that it can be in wind energy and clean technology to grow not only Virginia, but the Mid-Atlantic, as I said. But as I close, thank you for being with us in Harrisonburg. Come back and visit us at JMU and visit the Shenandoah Valley. If you're in town, I know the program has a lot of opportunities to support local economic development, which our businesses appreciate. And don't be afraid to call on JMU, to call on myself, John, Remy, whoever you met here, because JMU does want to be a thought leader and somebody who responds and is actionable. I do want to turn the floor over for one last set of announcements to Dr. Miles.
Final words, I promise. And thank you, Ken. Oversight on my part, I failed to thank Ken personally while we were out dedicating the PTF today. Ken was the very first person we turned to for assistance and support when we received the award, and he traced all over campus and the city and the county as we were looking for an appropriate site, and we finally put our heads together and decided we were going to convince the president we're going to do it right here, and he agreed with us. We're very thankful, and especially to all the very surly seniors who have to walk a little further down the park. But I want to extend my gratitude and thanks to all the staff, all 6 staff, I think 5 undergraduate interns, 2 graduate interns, and I think 11 volunteers who were kind enough to set aside their days yesterday and today to making this all happen. But especially Remy, Dee, could you come down? Taylor around? Hard at work, and I don't know if Cindy is still here. Everybody contributed, and this event doesn't happen without their dedication every single day, hours and hours that go on, and everybody contributed, but he was right at the beginning and the middle and the end of it all throughout. Remy, of course, keeps the clock ticking, the trains running every day, and Taylor as well. And I know you all corresponded with at least one, if not more of them. And Cindy, our administrative assistant, I think is left for the day, but
she's back at the shop.
She's back at the shop and helping things run. So we'll make sure Taylor and Cindy get theirs as well. And thank you again all for coming. It's been a real pleasure to have you. We look forward to it again. And anytime you want to come back, don't wait for another symposium. Just give us 5 minutes notice. We'll be happy to have you here. Thank you. Safe travel.